Hey, we are back after a long vacation, a long break.
Yes, that's my fault. 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, I guess
Four
actually.
weeks.
Yeah. Right. So,
Yeah,
so the
quite
goal
some time,
for
quite some time.
the goal, I guess, for the next half a year, so up till Christmas, up till the next bunch of vacations start happening, is we will try to be more regular, maybe even once
Oh,
every week,
we
if
can try
possible.
that, and I have to bring the bad news directly because next week on
Oh,
Friday I'm not in.
damn it, Steven.
But after that, I can try my
Right.
best. After that, I will try my best.
We can
Let's see
just
how
kill
this
the
plays
stream,
out.
go offline, and we can try the intro again, where I don't promise us to be regular
Yeah, that's true.
before next
That's
week
true.
at
No,
least.
no,
No,
we
that's
have a
fine. That's
goal.
fine.
We have a goal. I guess our
Yeah.
streak was 5 times in a row, 6 times in a row. I guess that's
Yes.
it's a noble goal if you can reach this again. I would
Absolutely.
like that. I would like that.
We'll give it a go. Anyway, so you have been vacationing and working, and I have been vacationing even more. But as I told you just before we went online, when you're vacationing with kids, it's not really a vacation, small kids at least. So, yeah, so 4 weeks, and now it's back to doing some open source. Were you
Yes.
renewed? Did you get an MVP award again this fall
Yes.
here in July?
Yes, I did.
Congratulations! I did too.
Thank you. You too, yeah. I'm waiting for the ring. You get these. Did you receive
Yes.
this already?
No, not yet. Not the 2024 one. And
Yeah.
I was actually, I think I got mine 2023, half a year later, because they're not shipping to Iceland because of customs. So it's a thing. But yeah, it's fine. So now it's time to start booking those plane tickets and hotel in Seattle for the MVP summit. I don't know if you're able
Yes.
to go next. They already announced the
I
dates,
hope
which is
so.
great. So you actually have time to plan and prepare. But it's a good experience. So I recommend coming if possible. So yeah, but we'll see. Definitely. I will. I've seen you've been somewhat active while I was on vacation on the bUnit side of things in the issues list and all of that.
Yes. If you would call it active, that's very generous of you to
Well,
call
you've
closing one
actually
issue as
responded to
active.
issues, and yeah, and there's been
That's
some
true.
discussions
That's
around
true.
things, yeah, and there was some questions. So I don't know if you want to, since you've actually done anything, you've done something. Do you want to share your screen and just take us through what you've
Yes,
where
let me
we
just
are in terms of
zoom
community?
in.
Let's get the community stuff out of the way,
Yeah,
and
that's very good. Let me just present my screen and then so perfect. I hope it is readable.
it
So,
seems so. Yes.
okay, perfect. So there's no overlap. Perfect. Okay, so we had, I guess, 2 or 3 comments. Whereas one was a new issue. Let's discuss the latest issue first before we go back into the past.
Hmm.
So there is this unfortunate thing where basically a customer of ours reported an issue where since he upgraded bUnit from 129 to the latest version, which is 133,
Hmm.
he has experienced some failing tests because you can see down here on the bottom. Let me hide that screen. I'm very sorry. Always keep forgetting to hide that small thingy there. Anyhow,
Yes.
and the problem is that in the Microsoft code, by the way, this description of that bug is, it's really excellent. It was really nice to work with that stuff. It made it really easy.
Yeah. Shout out to. I'm not gonna try to say that name. Chad, does he have a full name? Chris.
Chris,
Shout out,
that's
Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Well done. That's how you do a bug report.
Yeah, exactly. And as you can see in the picture where he debugged through the stuff,
Hmm.
the unfortunate thing is in the Blazor code, there is something which basically checks if the browser file, so that's that thing if you want to upload a file from your local file system to a server,
Hmm.
it basically wraps that thing in a browser file. You, as a customer or a user of not of the unit of Blazor, you will handle with this iBrowser file, and bUnit gives you the bUnit version of that browser file, so
Hmm.
you can easily set up those stuff. The unfortunate bit is that the team itself checks if the interface is of their own type, and if it isn't, it just throws an exception. Now, this is
So
very unfortunate,
is it
and
an internal type Microsoft is checking for?
Yes, unfortunately.
Okay, so we
And
can't. Oh yeah, so it
we
says
can't, and
browser file. It's not iBrowser file. It checks if it is. It has to be their specific browser file.
yes, I'm very unfortunate. And I opened I guess it's over a year ago, I opened even a ticket on the ASP.NET Core repository. Unfortunately, they don't want to change that. So we are a bit out of luck. We cannot do much against that code. So if you somehow go into request image file async, and unfortunately the customer is doing that, or the user, not customer, then we are a bit out of luck. So the thing is, that's not entirely the problem. The problem started with 130 because that bit is in there since a year or so. But the customer reported that with the latest and greatest version. And if we have a
Yes.
look what we did in the latest and greatest version, I can show you here the diff. We
Oh, they started
basically
actually.
bubbling exactly. So if the dispatcher encounters an exception, prior to version 130, there was an exception, and it's somewhat fine. But with 130, we bubble this exception up to user code. We did this because of another request where if you can set up the size of, or the maximum file size of your uploaded file. And if this exceeds, it should throw an exception. That's why we have that code. That's why these lines were introduced.
Yes.
But unfortunately, they bubble up everything and not only our bUnit internal exceptions or the stuff we are checking. So what we did basically is to say, hey, only bubble up our custom stuff. We know exactly we are throwing an IO exception, and therefore let's just bubble up IO exceptions and not everything. Good thing is he already checked it and he said like, okay, everything works fine. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I'm wondering, can you talk a bit more about why it's correct of us only to? I know I approved the PR because I just assume everything you do is right, but I'm curious. Can you explain why it's okay for us to just only bubble up or rethrow exceptions that
Okay.
we throw versus general exceptions from the framework?
Yeah, exactly. So let me just go to the important bit because the other commits is just keeping up to date with package versions. So that's basically the fix. That whole thing is the fix to the
But
problem.
IO
We are just
exception isn't
checking
our exception, right? That's a generic.
exactly.
Well,
IO
not a
exception
generic,
is a
but
very,
it's built in. Yeah.
but it's the one we are throwing to mimic the behavior of Blazor in that specific circumstance, which led to version 130. That's why we have that bit in.
Okay, so what we didn't do before was that we didn't throw an IO exception if the payload was too large, and that was what the user was expecting.
Exactly.
But what if
Exactly.
and the code that the Blazor team has, where they check if it's a specific internal type, and if it isn't that internal type, they throw an exception. That's not a use case that the user is able to trigger, right? That's not a scenario that they're normally able to trigger.
Exactly.
That's because there's something else is going on at a higher level. So it's not something we should be surfacing in either way.
Yes, exactly. On top, I would argue, even if because the stronger reason for me is that we cannot do anything against that. And the user has no additional information just by surfacing this exception. There's no interaction the user can do to prohibit this exception.
Well, it makes sense. But I'm curious, the reason why that we got into that, so the code he highlights there in his bug report, the reason why we don't go into the if statement, but we rather go to the invalid operation exception is because during testing, the user is not passing in a browser file, it's passing in an abstraction and different implementation of iBrowser file than the one that the runtime would use. Do we not have a way? So who is creating the iBrowser file? Is it something that we are creating for the user?
We.
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a way to instantiate the browser file, the expected browser file from Blazor, or do we not want to do that?
Oh, I mean, thanks to especially .NET 8 or the new way of doing reflection or getting those
Sure.
types? Probably we could. We probably
Okay, yeah.
could.
So let me rephrase. So yes, obviously we can instantiate an internal type from the
The
framework.
question is, we should.
Should we be doing that? Because I see it's doing something browser file 2.owner.convert to. Do we want to have that be part of the test, or is it like should users actually have that happen? Because it's doing something, it's converting the input to something else, right?
Yes.
Request image file async. So it's doing some sort of conversion. And
that's fair, yeah. But this is from a bUnit point of view, everything, or from a customer's point of view, user's point of view, this is third-party behavior. Do you really care about that something is converted, which you cannot interact with later on? You cannot interact with the result of convert to image file async.
Can't you? Because it's a public method, request image file async, and it's returning the iBrowser file back out again.
Exactly, but it's just a browser file. iBrowser file does not have a property called owner, for example.
I see, but there must be something that's like it returns a new thing that supposedly has different content than it had before. There's a conversion going on, right? You're changing, I guess, format, height, and width. So, but I think so. Besides the point for this particular issue, which I think it seems you have solved that correctly, this might be because the reason why we have this issue in the first place is because we have some test specific abstractions, or we have some test helpers that allow you to test around uploading files, right? And that's
yes.
So it might be, and we might be cheeky enough to was it Craig or Chris Kandritsky, the creator of this issue? It was Chris. If we could ask, just as a follow up to this issue, just say, but should we actually be trying to, instantiate the browser, not an iBrowser file, but the internal browser file, and use that? Should we have a place where we do that instead, so that the request image file async method actually does what it's supposed to be doing?
So if I understand you correct, you want to know if he is interested into the result of preview file in his code. If it's important for him that preview file is really different than anything else, or than whatever is e-file.
Yeah, so I guess the input file change event arcs, that's something that we produce for him.
Yes.
Right, and that contains the I file. And when we instantiate the I file, I guess we could choose to create not a stop or mock iBrowser file, but the real browser file internally, so that if he has code like he's showing here, that any conversion might actually happen. So, for example, if he's choosing during his test to include a real image, and that gets converted, that might succeed, and then it does another thing. It could also be that he includes an image that then fails conversion, and there's a different exception, not the exception that he ran into here, but so it might be worthwhile to at least create an issue and have it in the backlog and say, well, does it make sense for us to do the extra work there? I hope so. Feel free to disagree, because I'm not sure. It might also be that he doesn't care, but there might be. So for me, I think the goal has always been that bUnit should work out of the box. Like if you're using first-party stuff from Microsoft, that we should, like we do with JS Interrupt, or we do with the virtualized component. There's a few built-in components that we want to support, and just so people should have a good experience doing that. Now, if it's not a hard thing to do, it might be worthwhile to do the extra check where we actually instantiate a real browser file and pass in whatever content the users have passed in. I haven't looked. I actually think it might be something that was either contributed by somebody else, or it was maybe, I don't know if it was you who actually created the upload functionality.
Yeah, I did this at this time.
Okay, so so if it doesn't make sense at all what I'm saying, I'm just thinking out loud here. Then
No, it doesn't. The only reason why I didn't do this is because browser file at the time, or it still is, internal.
Yeah, you don't want to do reflection if you can avoid it, right?
Exactly.
It's but I think we've softened up around that quite a bit in the last few years, because so many of the APIs that are part of the publicly observable behavior of Blazor are internal, right? So we have to be able to allow users to assert against the public observable behavior of the Blazor application, of Blazor components. We have to sometimes we have to resort to reflection to be able to actually expose that to the bUnit user. So that is the downside for us being on the outside versus having maybe a tool that would be in this, like if we were in the same solution as Microsoft, for example, even if bUnit was a separate project or library that was being built, but if it existed inside the same solution as the code from Microsoft, if they were doing bUnit, they would be able to also access the browser file without reflection.
Yes.
So, but we don't have that luxury, so we have to resort to reflection, which has turned out to be quite stable for us, because Microsoft, even if it's public stuff, for the most part, we have had very little problems with our use of reflection against the internal APIs in Blazor. And to be honest, though, many of there's multiple other projects that have reliance on internal stuff from Microsoft of the whole Blazor setup, a Blazor infrastructure code and all of that. So they're really working hard to prevent breaking changes also in the internal classes. So
but yeah, maybe we can find a way or somehow do it on our own way. The thing, if I can remember correctly, why I chose not to use reflection, besides the obvious one why you shouldn't use reflection, was that the upload files method we are giving the user is basically a convenience method. There are other ways around that. You do not have to use necessarily upload files. It just makes a lot of things easier for you. But obviously we should, keep the barrier as low as possible and mimic the Blazor behavior as closely as possible. That said, yeah, maybe we should invest a bit of time. It's like you take 2 months to investigate. Either you do it or you don't do it.
Hello, Maria. Thank you for joining.
Hello.
Hope you're having a good day. Okay, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think there's a few other PRs hanging about. I think you closed a bunch of the...
I did, and it's funny that I thought I also did this one, but maybe it never rebased configure entirely, or maybe I didn't do it correctly. You know what? I didn't do it correctly. I just updated this version, our main project. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not the generator.
That's it. Yeah. That is nice.
It's just to get it merged in. Yeah, just force merge it in, and we can, because I thought we might as well just do a new release with the changes that I will just squash and merge.
Can you, thank you, yeah, because
I'm just going to force it, so we don't have to wait.
Yay!
Yeah, so you can run the prepare release pipeline if you want.
Yes. You already mentioned
release. Yes, it should be there now.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Too late.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, got an email.
Yeah.
Someone merged something into main. Yes, I guess. Then we had, if we continue, we had this ignore children, which someone, now let me guess, 17th of July. I'm not sure if you were still there or not.
I was kind of on
Were we
vacation.
already
Then
on? Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hit it out a few days before that, and then it's been. So this is an issue as well. Yeah. So I expect this to be something that needs to be changed over in angle sharp diffing, because all the sample stuff I guess he's updated it. Let me just, can you scroll up to the top so we can see his two examples? With this
Ignore
test.
children, ignore attributes, and he sees still the not ignore here.
So
Yeah,
he's
have a look
rendering.
here. So he has just two buttons, one time with the span inside and one time without the span. And in both, or in this test case, it just says, okay, ignore basically children, so that thing, and also ignore attributes.
Yeah.
And the actual HTML is not really ignored.
No, you should just be able to actually just say ignore and not have both ignore attributes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably an issue I want to ship over to. I want to reproduce that over in angle sharp diffing, because all of that, unless there's something that goes wrong in our parser, but I don't expect that to be the case.
It looks very much like the diffing itself, because we're just offloading it to, well,
yes.
you.
Yeah. Oh.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm gonna butcher that name. Well, hello to you, Dinesh.
I just say hi, and I don't have to.
Hi, yeah, I'm.
Hi back.
I'm not good with Indian names, but nice to have you hanging out with us.
I'm not, in general, not good with names.
No,
Often.
well, that's.
Besides that, I'm not sure if there was much. I guess it's good that there's like the general thing of summer vacations, because here we have April, so this is a while ago. Unfortunately, did that person, let me just go down, I guess. May the 3rd. Yeah. I guess we're still waiting for input from the user.
Yes. I think I don't think that's anything we really I think that is sort
Can
of
do at the moment.
No, exactly. Okay, so you wanna
Good
switch gears and go back to our smarter rendering in V2?
We can do that.
Yes.
Oh God!
So,
what did we do last time?
Okay.
Let me have a commit. Do we have a commit? Is the question, or is it locally
I think
checked
actually
out?
we actually have a different branch. It's not called feed/v2 smarter rendering. It's just called v2 smarter rendering, because I think we rebased a bunch of times on main. So this might have been this might have been the last thing, and I think I pushed a VIP commit on the before we went on vacation. So yeah, but my voice is very low. Well, can't have that. Let's see. What can we do about that? Let me go into
Interesting.
settings here.
At least for me, you are normal. Interesting, but obviously I do not hear myself, so I can do the ASMR. Hello. Or you just scream. You can just scream.
No, well, I don't want to do that either. Let me see. Let me see. Nope, that's not the one I want. Here we go. I can't dial up the mic volume. So, can you hear me better now?
Well, probably measurable.
Yes,
Subjectively, I would argue you have the same voice.
Well, now you started screaming loud as well. So,
I'm sorry.
I don't know, but
Just-
I do see my what's it called? The thing that bounces up and down.
Yeah,
It
pitch.
comes pitch. Yes, it comes closer to the yellow and red parts. So
Red is good.
hopefully,
Red is good.
yes. Well, not red. I don't want it to.
No, okay.
But thanks for pointing that out, Maria. Let me know if it's loud enough now. So yes, I think what we were. So I took a little look at the code earlier today, and actually let me steal the screen for a bit because
Okay.
we were going back and forth with different. Well, hang on. Let me just start by opening up Visual Studio. There we go. We went back and forth.
While you do
and-
this,
Yes.
I did have some, but maybe we should do this after we merge that that work, because the latest and greatest preview we have, version 2.33 or something, will lead in some of my side projects to a lot of failing tests, that he cannot find some IDs, some rendered components, which is interesting given that our test suite is completely green. But I would really wait until we merge this stuff, because we changed quite a lot here again.
Absolutely.
And then check whether or not it makes sense to raise it, or just check my test code and just go through what's going on.
So
What is failing here?
it's yeah.
Maybe also for while you check the assertion data, while you're checking what went wrong in the minor release. So what we have planned for V2 for people who may watch us the first time is we want to basically restructure a bit how we render components, and these objects you receive from bUnit, what they are really. Wait, skip two? Oh, might be.
Yeah,
what
that's
those
normal.
components will, what those components will basically reflect. So in V1, every component has its own markup and everything, and it's disconnected to its parents. And what we want to try to achieve is that we have only one single source of truth, which is your markup, and one single source of objects, DOM objects, which are represented by Angular Sharp objects. And this fixes some issues we have, especially with form handling and find components, but also allows us some new nice scenarios like walking up the component tree and all those kinds of stuff. The interactions, it feels more natural what really in your browser would happen.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what's happening, but it's a .NET 5 test that is failing, so I'm inclined to ignore that. Oh, hang on. Somebody's at the door. 1 second.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I cannot. Let me take over the screen. And it's mine. Unfortunately, I have not the rights to force push stuff, but can I? Oh. No, I cannot. So exactly, maybe we should also turn. Oh, easy. So exactly, this is where we want to go. We want to allow some certain scenarios, and there is even somewhere a bug. I cannot find it anymore, unfortunately. Form handling, performance? No. Where exactly the scenario I described was with an example was way more in detail explained there. But here, this one. So here we have this example where we have basically someone providing a form, and you have an inner submit form, which is totally fine. But if you use something like render components and then find components, so here in the first example where you use the parent component, it still works perfectly. You can click and the on submit will be triggered. So that thing is true, and that works perfectly fine. The issue starts to arise once you use something like find component, because basically what find component does is it just sees this part as its root markup. So if you call find component and then do something, it doesn't bubble up to the form here on top. And this is what we try to solve with version 2 right now. I stole your screen. I hope that's fine for you. You are muted.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, perfect.
So I just I just pushed in the changes to main, to stable. So we have a release going out now.
Yay!
Yeah.
I like that.
So what were you talking about?
I was just showing this one ticket we had where
Yes.
exactly this behavior we have in V1 is problematic, and which we will solve now with V2, where we have just one representation, or if you
Yes.
want to be very, very technically correct, we have two representation: string representation and an angle shock representation of the DOM.
Actually, yeah. Yeah. So I think we were trying a few things and had some ideas last time. And I think I wanna write down what we want to happen after each render, so that we can rethink what is happening now, and maybe we can try to solve some of the issues we have, and while keeping the functionality we need, and maybe also clean up in our API stack a bit. So yeah, that was what I was about to. But actually, I think I want to go in and do it here in the repos. Sorry, in the issue instead. So we can talk about that. So I'm gonna steal back the screen. Here we go, and give us a little bit of working space here. So during, I guess, / after each render cycle. Well, obviously we need to. So with V2, we are now inheriting from something called inheriting from component state, and component state is the internal. It's basically an instance of an object that gets tracked, that the Blazor renderer creates for each and every object, for each and every component that you have in your component tree. It has a correspondent component state object that tracks each and every component's state from the meta state of the not the component's internal state, but the meta state, the state like telling it whether it's been disposed, whether it's rendered, whether it needs its parameters updated or not, all the things that the render keeps track of. So for each component, so you can imagine that's also why in terms of performance, if you're building a big Blazor application or Blazor component, and for example, the classic is a grid, right? You're building a grid or table. If you have a component for each cell in that grid, you want to support 1,000 columns and 1,000 rows, you're going to have 1,000 times 1,000 individual components. The component itself will have an instance object in memory, plus there will be a component state object in memory as well. So that's why some of the recommendations from the Blazor team, if you need performance, is to don't have components for everything, but maybe have reusable component, or rather render fragments, which you can it's basically just a Lambda method that takes a build render tree method and returns nothing. That's a render fragment, and that doesn't have states, but it doesn't also have a component state object in the Blazor renders hierarchy. Now, so what we are doing in bUnit v2 is that we have something called we have an iRendered component of T components, which you also have in V1, is inheriting from component state. And because from .NET 8, I believe, we are actually able to override, so the Blazor renderer, whenever it needs a new component state, there's a virtual method that we can override in our derived renderer, and it will come and ask us for component state, and we can, instead of creating the internal components, well, it's actually a public method, public type, we can create our render component. So we have access to the component tree without having to duplicate, without having to create our own component tree structure for tracking just that. We can leverage the thing that is built into Blazor, which is kind of nice. Now, so there's a bunch of things that can happen during a render cycle, right? So, I'm just trying to make things up as we go, but it can be disposed. It can have changes, I guess. Well, it can.
If you have an async operation, yes, or you know that there will be changes.
Yeah. So, well, what I'm getting a whole bunch of emails. If you're hearing sounds in the background, it's just because we're releasing a whole bunch of NuGet packages. So that's why it's it's dinging on my side. Well, actually, let's go into the.
Welcome back, Mr. Blazor. No, Blazor, Mr. McCoy. Always, it's always. I'm always wrong. Lurking while working, yes.
Yes. And we are hardly working, so good match. Or working hard, or well, is it? So in the update display async method, which is the one I was looking for, this is where things basically gets reported to us, and we have disposed components. We have updated components, and I believe there's one more. Let me just go and double check. So reference frames. So yeah, okay. So this is just a container for that in the updated components list, it will point over to here and say these are actually the changes in sort of a whatever the render free render tree frames, the render tree that represents the changes in the current render cycle. Those are getting this is whatever parts over here is getting referenced from the render tree diff we get. And obviously we have a list of disposed component IDs. We have disposed event handlers. So that's another thing that can happen. We can have disposed components. We can have a component with disposed event handlers. So an event handler is something where you have an add, on click or something. And if you doing a render cycle, maybe remove some markup from your components so that the event handler is no longer there, or you just remove it altogether.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing custom markup, you're not getting that generated. So the event handlers can get disposed from the component, and obviously the component can just be updated. It can have changes. So that would typically involve having changes to its markup. But it can actually just be listed as being updated without, if we go into the render tree diff here, it can have an empty edits list. So the edits list can be empty, but it will still be reported as being updated, right? So if there's edits, that means that you are either removing markup from like the rendered markup tree from that component and its children, that would show up in the edits list. But I believe the scenario is where this is empty, is that if a child component has changes, but the parent component does not. But I'm not entirely sure. So we might want to double check on that.
Yeah, I can remember we did some stuff around this, especially with the debug assertions, and some of them were true, some of them were not so true.
Yes, so we can just say a component can be disposed. Well, okay, component is disposed. It can have changes or be updated. So that's sort of the things that a component can happen to a component during a render cycle. Now, a component is part of a component tree, so there's always a root component to that. That's sort of the initial component, and there will always be the root component state, and root I render component that will represent the full component tree. Now, what we do so our hook is, if we go back in here, we get told here, update display async. And there's a few things we want to do. We have, so let's just, I'm going to reorganize this, but I'm just trying to gather my thoughts because I want to make sure that we, instead of trying to just flail about, so I guess this is an attempt of actually writing down some notes so that in a week or 2 weeks when we're doing this again, we don't have to, reinvent the wheel or forget half of what we're trying to do, right? So trying to be a bit smart here. Let's see if that actually works out. So I can also call, what's it called again? Update display async. So this is the main method that does stuff, right? So bold. Does this actually logo right? Yeah, it does. All right. So update the renderer's render count. So we want to always do that. Let's just, I'm not sure. I think it's something, so this is, it's something we use in certain exception messages to be able to say, well, how many times does this renderer actually do a re-render, right? How many times did this method gets called? Because that might be something we want to assert against, or well, not necessarily assert against, but it's something that we can display in exception messages to help debug why a test not working as we expect them to, right? So that's one thing. Because we are now inheriting from component state, the component state's dispose method gets called when the component is disposed, and it actually gets called before this method is called. So we don't need to do anything specific. Well, we just need to override the dispose async method in component state so that we can know that has happened, and we can update the parts of the state in our rendered component to reflect that component does no longer exist. So we might want to, in our rendered component tree, we might actually want to track not just the parent, but also children, right? So if a component in a tree, let me see if I can find my whiteboard to draw this out. But if we have a component in a tree, let's throw it over here for now. Oh, actually, we still have a drawing from last time here. So I thought. Oh, no. I say, open that one, please. I guess not. Oh well. So, well, let me draw something when I get to it. So the idea is if we have a list of child components when you are on a rendered component and you want to go and see what are my children, well, you could do that, but we would want to, when a specific child is disposed, we want to call its parent and say, hey, remove me from your list, right? We want to notify the parent so it's no longer there. So we can maintain our, the view of the world. This doesn't really have any effect on us as far as I can tell. We don't really need to handle anything related to event handlers. No, I don't believe so. But there might be changes. Now, if a component has any changes or have been updated, we want to update the components render count. So I think we
can if or
say again?
Only if the count of edits is really greater 0.
Yeah. So should we make that a rule? Because
I think the last time we decided to, yes.
Yes, and let me just go back here to make sure I get the right. No, that would be an. Come on, you can do it. So I want to say if edits.count bigger than 0, right? So if and only if the render tree diff edits.count, or rather increment I want to say this I rendered components yes is bigger than 0. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. All right. Now, if a component has a render tree diff, independent of whether or not its count is bigger than 0.
Yeah.
We probably want to notify any waiting. So we have the concept of you can subscribe. Well, subscribe is a strong word, but you can, in bUnit, you can say, I'm going to wait for my component to change, and then I'm going to try my assertion again. We have the wait for assertion, we have wait for state, we have wait for elements, stuff like that. Now, independent of whether or not that is edits, if a component was part of a render cycle, I'm fairly certain we want to trigger, we want to tell any waiting, whatever it might be, wait force as we call them, wait force. We want to notify any wait force of that component or its child components, right? But we probably actually want to notify any wait force of its parents as well, because we
basically like everyone in the chain.
Yeah, everyone. So basically, we just could jump up to the root and say, "Hey, root component, something changed in you. You might want to notify anybody who's waiting at any level of that component tree." Because if I, for example, in my code write something like this, let's jump into some Razor code here and say var cut equals render some markup, and I go and find my some element cut.find, or rather, so yes, it doesn't matter really. I can just say cut.wait for assertion, and my assertion would be, I don't know, well, to be more explicit, wait for element, and I would wait for a diff element in here, right? Now, because I'm waiting at the root, I could be waiting on something really further down the line. So I would need to notify basically top to bottom, right? I think that's the argument here. We don't know, but also I don't see any problem in, well, we waste a bit of resources, but I don't think we hurt anything by triggering one too many wait for callbacks, right? Because essentially, if any component in a component tree has done anything, it might be something that a user is waiting for. So we would rather err on the side of caution and notify that there has been some changes in your component tree somewhere in the component tree that you might want to investigate. And people's assertion methods or whatever they're waiting for should be intelligent enough to deal with that hasn't happened if that specific thing they're looking for. And the only thing we're wasting is CPU cycles by trying out whatever they're trying to do, right? So notify wait force at component tree root level. So probably what's the reason? That would be component has been updated or disposed. Well, I guess also if it has some event handler, right? That's potentially also a change. So if the component shows
Yeah.
up in any way in a render batch, we go to its parent, and maybe the parent is sort of where we are attaching the weight force going forward instead of at individual components, but we can get to that later. So the component has been updated, disposed as disposed event handlers or been disposed. So notified, just going to put them in quotation mark, wait for
subscribers. Because you could also subscribe on yourself on
yes.
markup updated on the render update.
Let's call it subscribers. Let's call it subscribers. Okay. After that, now. So that's one scenario, right?
So this is for you chronologically.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I'm just trying to brainstorm.
Okay, because if we would update someone that something has happened, we should reflect the latest state in our iRendered component. For example, markup updates. If you notify that there's some change, obviously it has to be a latest and greatest markup.
Yeah. So also in V1. Oh, by the way, Stephen, you want to answer this one?
Is Stephen a Blazor developer? That depends of what you define as a Blazor developer.
I believe you charge people money for creating Blazor applications for them. So in my book, that makes you a Blazor developer. But he's not the Blazor developer. He's not Steven Sanderson. He's another Steven. And he's the co-maintainer of bUnit. So yeah.
That would be also good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I charge people for everything, so it doesn't matter if it's Blazor or not. No, I'm just using Blazor as his main job. Unfortunately, no, I'm not using. It would be lovely. It would be very, very lovely to use Blazor in my professional life. I am somewhat stuck always with Angular. Not that I don't like Angular. I do like Angular.
Be honest.
But there's no, I do like Angular. At first I didn't like it, and now since because if you use it over 6-7 years in a variety of projects, at some point you get so much used to it that you think like, okay, it's nice. But on a serious note, no, unfortunately. I wouldn't call it like that, but no, I do like Angular. I get paid from Google to say that.
Yes. Angular is fine, right? It's at some point if you're efficient with it. But yeah, no. So I think I'm in the same boat as Stephen. I do sneak in. I've done a lot of recently, like the last year or so. I've done a couple of Blazor server projects at work, usually smaller. Line of business or internal dashboards or something. Blazor server is really excellent for that, right? Or kind of applications that don't have millions of users, but maybe a couple of hundreds or thousands of users, because it's so damn fast to develop in it if you know it a bit. It's mostly basically some C# code wrapped around HTML and CSS, right? So you can get a lot done very fast, and you have that very interactive model with Blazor server. The only downside is the occasional disconnect of the signal connection, and there are some stuff that are getting done around that will improve that reconnect experience a bit, right? But it's a really good tool for that. I probably wouldn't build the next Facebook using Blazor server, but it's really, really excellent for building line of business applications or internal applications or with a limited target of users, right? And everything is so, but that's a different story. Anyway, hope that answered your question. All right.
Exactly. So markup updates.
Yes. Using it every day for past 3 years. So yeah,
that's an
envious position, right? So you're probably better than us at Blazor than we are.
Yeah.
We know too much about the internals of Blazor, unfortunately, which comes with the job of doing bUnit.
And how interesting would this be? You know, we both have to build a Blazor application. We can't, but we can write basically the testing framework around Blazor. That's just that would be good. No.
Exactly.
But I in my private projects I use Blazor a lot because it's as Ege said, you're damn fast. Once you get the hang of it, it's just amazing. And for my former company, I also did some POCs in Blazor because I was way faster than any of the other frameworks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I envy you that you can use it. I would love to use it more.
Absolutely.
Markup updates.
I have a dog barking in the background. I hope it's not too annoying for people. Yes. So markup updates.
You can just bring it in front of the camera. Maybe people like dogs.
Our neighbor's yard. So yeah, we want to update render count. We want to notify, and then we get to the hard part. So again, about updating the markup and by extension updating the nodes, the Angelsham nodes. So we want to do that as little as possible because it's probably the most expensive part of it. So my assumption is, and that might be something we want to check, but if and only if there is updated components in the render tree where there is, again, edits, if there are any edits, we could do something. We could try to do patching, but I think the safe bet is probably, if we start by looking at the raw string markup, we probably just want to regenerate that because that's pretty damn fast anyway, right? So just regenerate the whole string, and it's immutable anyway, right? So it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I think I was thinking about this the whole problem we have about updating. We have around updating the indices. So we just want to create one string that represents the full tree, and then we know from start to end where each of the subcomponents markup starts and ends. So we capture indices when we're generating the markup. All of that, the indices start to end, that could just be stored in a dictionary, I believe, in the root component. So we capture that up there instead. And child components, they just ask the root component, this is my component ID, give me my part of the string, right? Because I think that might make some of the more complex things we want to do with the nodes easier. Now, the lofty, like what would be really nice would be if we could then just take our raw markup and try to just patch into the existing nodes and try to change as little as possible about the DOM nodes afterwards. And we've tried various iterations around that. The idea and the reason why we want to try to do that, or we want to at least try to get close to having something like that, is that if I in my test code have something like, render some component stuff here, and I've done I don't know, var element and cut.find some element, the classic button click stuff, and then I do element.click to trigger the click. But if my button contains, I don't know, some stuff in there, so if we have something like, I don't know, element.inner text should be, I guess, count 1. After I click it, I would like to just be able to do this and not have to do this again, right? We want the element reference, which is just a C# object. We want that to actually be updated, not have that element be thrown away and have force users to go and find them again. initially, back in 4 or 5 years ago, during the beta phases of bUnit, users always have to do this. And I got so many questions about that, like why I'm not seeing changes. I say, well, you have to go and find that was like half of the questions I got was around, well, I was expecting this to be updated, but it isn't. And so did you go and look at, so people are expecting this behavior. And it was something I could have said, well, that works as expected. You have to go and query every time after each change, because we basically throw away the whole, DOM tree. But so I had to do a whole bunch of nasty work, like wrapping all the angle sharp elements inside something, so I could basically go and requery, because we do throw away the whole DOM tree every time, still in V1. Now we want to be smart about that and see if we can get around that. And that's one thing. I would also like to achieve being able to say, well, I would like to be able to go from an element and saying, which component do you belong to? Right. So right now, if I go and do something like this and then say, find some button. If this, whatever I've rendered up here has multiple layers of component, I can't say, and I think that was one of the issues we have, element get component, for example. Get component of, and or it could also be generic way, say I want to get a specific type of component out again, or it can just be non-generic, and you just get an you will get an I rendered component
of I component
out, and you can inspect that and figure out what is the type of component that is there, or you can go ahead and say, well, I expect it to be of, I don't know, foo button, and then it would be foo button, yeah. So being able to get that would be a useful thing. And also, if I go and say find, so that's one scenario. Another scenario is that we have, this is an I rendered component of, I think, bUnit root component, right? And if I go and say I rendered component of, let's see, foo button, and button, and do cut.find component foo button. Now, if I go and find button element from root and button element from foo button, and obviously we would need to do this. So this is coming from an element trying to find the, this was going from go from element to component tree. This is oh yeah, this is going from component tree to element, parentheses. So we want to go both directions. Now the problem is here, we kind of expect these to, we want to do reference equals, and that's not the case right now. They might be equal in terms of having the same content, but they're not the same. They don't have the same parent, because when you go in V1 and find a component, we will grab its markup, recreate its raw markup string, which will still be the same, but we would also recreate all the nodes that are specific to that component and its child components. And if we already have done that up here with this, it would again, it won't reuse the component. So we want so essentially we want reuse of angle sharp across rendered components, right? So an angle sharp DOM node will only be owned or come from a single rendered component, but we just want one rendered. We only want one angle sharp DOM that is built probably at the root component. And then we want a way to say, well, okay, if I get a child component out like we have here, when I go and look at the button.node enumerable connection here, I just want to see the nodes that belong to the foo button and not and obviously child components. So we want to sort of slice like we do with strings, right? If you go to button.markup, this is like a slice of the cut. I swear I can hit the buttons markup string. Like this is a subset of that, right? And similarly, we want the same behavior here, right? And this hasn't been a problem because markup is a string, right? So it's immutable, and two immutable things are equal, whereas nodes are not. These are just objects. So that's sort of what we're trying to do. So there's two challenges here. Well, the first one is actually fairly simple in terms of just updating markup. So if there is any change, if there's any edits where count is bigger than 0, if there's any changes during a render, so if any component has tell root to recreate markup for the full tree. Right? That's probably going to be, we could try to optimize ever so slightly, right? But probably just going to be cause of headaches and complexities later on. So I think we're just going to do that update because it's a string. Now, while we do that at the root level, here we want to track start and end indices for each component. And apparently I almost spelled it right, indices, so that we know which part of the markup belongs to each component from the roots and its child components, which child components from the roots perspective own each part of the markup. Now, ideally, we want to do the same thing for the nodes. So I think the challenge here is maybe I would need to do a deep dive, or we can do that together, into the AngleSharp APIs. There's been some changes in the recent versions of AngleSharp where there's new ways to influence the elements that get created. That's basically a factory pattern now, as far as I can tell. And I remember giving feedback to Florian Rebel. You can probably say that name. He's a German fellow who's
Florian.
Creator. Florian, yeah. And because we have that, we can probably create not wrappers, the AngleSharp wrappers we have now, but we can create our own types that inherit, if we need to, that inherit. But there's also other hooks now that might give us the leverage we need to have the AngleSharp parser that will parse HTML run through the markup we create and spit out nodes, but along the way, maybe we yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Like, how can we just have the parser generate markup if you go to the last child node of our component tree and have that pass whatever markup it belongs to, and have angle sharp return a node list for that, and then the next one and next one all the way up, and then when we're done, we combine them all to one node tree, so manually sort of construct them together so they are all shared from the top down. That might be one approach to sort of split them up. We know if you looked at the generated markup from a Blazor application, you will see what are the comments? It's like something like
exactly.
And then, so Blazor actually puts this into markup every time there's a new component that starts up. We could also add that because we have the indices. So every time we have a start indice, before we go and render, or rather before we go and pass the raw markup string, we could inject something like this markup components into the raw markup string, and we can use them. We could even replace this with a number that represents the component ID. So whenever we see one of those in the generated markup, generated DOM nodes, we can sort of slice and dice the nodes. So yeah, that's one way, I guess, to do it.
Yeah.
Because we
can you patch angle sharp DOM nodes in the first place?
Say again.
Can you mutate angle sharp DOM elements?
Yes. So we have the full browser API in Angle Sharp. So we could also go and find I don't know, DOM.
No, sorry. What I mean is your example with the text button, which updates on click. Can we update the angle sharp DOM object, that C# object?
Yes.
To guarantee that reference equals stays the same over time.
Well, so that's two different problems. Reference equals would the reason why
not this one basically
like yeah. But so there's two I think there's two different things here. So here we've looked for the same button in two different from two different routes. In V1, this wouldn't work because the render component of button here has a different set of DOM nodes created from the same markup as up here, but they are created on their own. They're not the same. Like reference equals doesn't work. They might actually be equal if you use the equal sign, because I actually think Angle Sharp is overriding that. But they're not reference. They're not the same. They're not the same instance object, right? So, in terms of patching the DOM, that's not really related to whether or not reference equals works.
That's not the one I meant.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry. So, you meant.
The one you deleted already, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. So
yeah, basically this one, the inner text change.
Yeah. So we have element.click, and we want to be able to do this. Should be able to see changes in nodes without requerying all of them. Well, that's not how we spell requerying.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, it was almost right.
I think. No.
It's almost requeuing. Isn't it RYI?
Querying.
No, with a Y after the R. No. Almost.
Jesus. Okay, let's see if the spelling will help.
QU?
Okay. Refined.
Okay, awesome.
Jesus
Awesome.
Christ. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So the important thing is we know what I mean, not and independent of whether I can spell
Yes,
it or not. Yeah. So
exactly. And
yeah,
this for me would be a, if we want to do this, which I do, I would sign that. The question is, does Angle Sharp support a way for us to hook in and update already rendered or already created elements?
it does. So the way Blazor does it, the Blazor render, we actually experimented with that a few years ago, where we just try to completely emulate the rather complex algorithm that's in place. If you go and look at Blazor server, what you get sent down the wire or a signal connection is just the diff of the DOM tree, and then you have it's render tree edits, and those render tree edits through some rather complex TypeScript is just applied. It actually could do a single pass over all the DOM nodes in the browser and remove them, those that don't need to be there, update the ones that need to be there, and so on and so forth. Now the challenge is that you want to do that in a way where you, for example, if you have in the browser at least, if you have an element like a video playing, right? And if it's, you don't want to delete it because it had a sibling that came before it that got removed, and you want to move it up, so you basically you can't delete everything. You have to be smart about it, so you can remove things before. But if you delete that just to move it up and down the screen, then you're going to stop the video and it's going to reset back to its. You want to keep the live in the state, and we have sort of the same problem here, right? So we want to be very smart about it, and there's a whole bunch of different patching algorithms out there. I actually, through my work with HTMX, they are trying to solve some of those issues as well, where they are trying to patch in stuff that are coming, like changes, and you want to morph. I think morphing algorithms is probably the thing we want to Google for. I can't spell that either. Morphing algo. It's not a good day for spelling DOM JavaScript. There is some. Oh, actually, this is the one from. Interesting. This is a Big Blue Sky software is the folks that are building HTMX as well. So yeah, where you basically have one DOM tree and you want to morph it into another DOM tree, and and apparently there's 37 Signals guys that are doing, they're using IDMorph, and basically you have existing nodes and you have some new content, and that is essentially what we're doing, right? On each render, we might, if we actually want to recreate the markup, we recreate the full markup, and then we say, well, I'm going to morph my existing nodes to this, and all it does, all it does is that it's using the DOM APIs, which AngularJam also exposes to us. So I haven't looked at this code, but IDMorph, well, it's 900 lines of code. It might be quite
okay.
it might be quite easy to port this to C# because Florian, again, the creator of AngleSharp, is being very careful to re-implement AngleSharp in a way that is according to the spec. So if we use something like this, and there might be other morphing algorithms that are more simple, does the same thing, and solve the problem for us. So what they're also trying to do, the various morphing algorithms, whoops, went one step too far, is to be very efficient and do it in a way that doesn't cause problems with, for example, playing content, right? So it's able to patch it efficiently. So that might be one way. If we do that, we can get around having to deal with our angle sharp wrappers, right? So I think it's worth investigating if this would be a simpler approach, right? Now, the second part that I don't have a good solution for, well, that's not where I want to go. I want to go here, would be to figure out how, if I go in here and if we jump, oh, yeah, I have actually, so it's a bit easier to read. If we go in here, we go and render some component, we go and find this foo component. This button has a set of nodes, and that set of nodes should be a subset of whatever nodes that are in cut.node, right? So we want to have the same object. And the challenge here is to figure out how to create a sort of a virtual node list that points to a specific set of nodes in the roots node tree. And to some extent, Angle Sharp, you can ask it when you run its parser, you can ask it to track when it's creating elements. At least you can ask it to track what is in the text string you give it. If the raw text string, you can ask it to track the indices where that element was at. So since we know if we have a component that has a start indices of, let's say, 4 and it ends at 8, or well, let's take a bigger number, and we have our component tree and we have an element that is because we can see the source reference of an element in Angle Sharp. If that is maybe from, I don't know, position 6 to position, I don't know, 18, well, we know that element belongs to this, right?
Yeah.
Yes. The challenge is, what about if we have, so as far as I can tell, the more general concept is a node, and that doesn't track its source position. So that would be things like text and a few other things. And we would want those to also somehow be part. So I think that is a bigger unknown for me right now to try to figure out. And that would probably require us to deep dive a bit more on the in Angle Sharp and have a look into the code and see what options we have there, or if we need to customize. You can also, again, you can override. You can override the parser, and you can basically, there's some virtual methods in that, and maybe if we override the parser, we are able to, while it's parsing, when it gets to, basically, I think I've seen some options where whenever it wants to create a new node or an element, it will call a method. And maybe it will include some information about where it is in the stream of that is currently parsing. And maybe we can use that to sort of, besides the DOM tree that Angle Sharp wants to build up, we can maybe have our own pseudo DOM tree that has elements that where we know where they belong, where they belong in. So yeah, it's a fairly it's not a trivial problem, right? Now, if we go back to the things we want to do again here, so this is just nodes and example code. After create a single DOM tree, create or update / patch single DOM tree. provide a way for each rendered component to return just the nodes they own. Now, if we don't have this last bit here, and I'm wondering if it's even necessary. So
just note they own plus all descendants, or really just the ones they own?
so I'm wondering if I again do a find component. If I go in and search, so I guess it might make sense that you want to. The thing is, typically when you go and find a component, and then you afterwards say on that component, I want to find specific markup. So the expectation is that you're only searching from that node, or from that component's markup and down, right? So yeah, I think we do need to have that split. We need to find a way where we can.
This also enable the get component call you had earlier? So you have just a random angle sharp. So if you have a random. You.
No, go ahead, Stephen. I'm just. Can you repeat what you, because I don't think I understand what you meant.
So exactly. So this feature, what you write down, isn't that also the enabler for if you have a random angle sharp node and you basically call get component?
Mm-hmm. Random angle sharp node. Yeah, the I think.
Yeah, it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore. Yeah. So go.
Oh, it is. Sorry, there. Go from element to component tree. Sorry, I didn't find this. Exactly. So button element from root.get component. Yeah, basically, because we have to have this mapping somewhere, this one would be fairly cheap once we have that.
Sorry, let me just close folder, open. I just want to actually move this over here and just say this is a markdown. It might, I don't know if syntax highlighting is better here in visual, or at least we can do, nope. At least we can do this. Doesn't help. C#. Yeah, that makes it a bit easier to read.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we don't need the preview anymore, which is basically what I wanted to have here. Sorry, so you said get component.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To be able to do that, we would need to know where button element from root. Well, that's probably a bad example, but if we take this instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to get back to having a foo button, I want to get the component. Now, I don't know if this might be nice to have. It might not be something that people will use a lot. Right.
That's fair. I just wanted to say that this feature you proposed earlier is, it's not that far of a stretch to have get component based on that.
So I think the real point is that if you are able to slice up a list of nodes, right, and say, rather a DOM tree, if you can slice that up and say these part of the tree belong to this component, which we would need for this requirement up here, then you get this for free, right? Because you have that information.
Yeah.
It's not something you would have to work for because it's already there. You can, if you can go one way, you can go the other way as well, right? So it's a fairly straightforward thing to add. So this is more like a nice to have. It might be nice to be able to go and say, well, I found this button, I find this element, but maybe I have like a bullet list with 10 different buttons in it, and I went and said find some button, right? Find me a button, and or maybe you have a more complex CSS selector, and you actually want to say, well, did I actually get the button out from the component I'm trying to do something with, or did I get a different button? So it's more like, it's probably more a debugging tool for end users, that they can go and verify that the element they got actually belongs to the component they thought they are trying to test something about. And that might that might help. I think certainly looking back on some of the issues and discussions, questions we've had, that might have helped solve some of the or answer some of the questions. Like it might have been like, typically we would say, well, go and give us the full raw markup so we can try to figure out where is the thing you actually found out, and then we see, well, there's 5 of those you search for, so you're sure you're getting the right one. So it might help answer some of those questions, right? So it would more be like a useful debug tool than something you, well, it's hard to imagine what people are necessarily going to be using your stuff with, but that's my expectation. So now, the big challenge is there's certainly morphing algorithms that allows us to patch a single DOM tree with a new source markup. I think the big challenge in terms of the AngularSharp API is to figure out where each of the things belong. We might, I think, so what I could try to do is I can try to reach out to Florian actually, and ask if he wants to jump on a stream with us, and just no bUnit, just prototype on, here's two, here's markup, and these are the indices in that markup that belongs to, like can he help us devise a way, because AngularSharp is a complex beast. So I want to make sure, also because we want to be using the latest version of AngularSharp, I want to make sure that we are not doing something stupid. So I want to reach out to him and see if we can lure him in. That sounds very stalkery and abduction kind of a. But no, see if you want to jump on a stream and give us some help with this. That would be awesome, because I feel like we have most of this done. Like in terms of notifying subscribers, what we have in V1 is that we have both on after render and on after markup updated. I think we don't need to have both. We can just make do with one of them. Right.
Probably the markup one is the more important one here, because that's also the one we are using for wait for XXX.
It's also the one we're using for wait for XXX. Yeah, well, so again, so going back to the whole thing about, is it a problem if we notified one too many times? So if a component, even if edit count was 0, if it's been part of a render, it usually means somebody has called status changed, and maybe some internal state that people might be asserting on has changed, so people want to be notified after each render cycle. So I would rather just notify one too many times.
That's fair. My assumption is if you land into update display async, there has to be something.
Yes. So so that's also why we write here. We're like, even event handlers disposed. So actually, so that would be a breaking change from V1, and I've already sort of gone ahead and just experimented a bit with that. But I just deleted a bunch of. Oh, that's not it. Here, no, that's just me moving stuff around here. So yeah, we probably just need this. We don't need on after markup, just on after render, because that's, by the way, that's also a name that people recognize from Blazor. So even though this is more of an internal API, right? Because I'm pretty sure that we are the only ones using it. Well, I haven't searched on GitHub to see if anybody else is actually subscribing directly to the event handler, but we're using it for our wait force. But anybody else, most likely, they'll be fine. Like this gets called more often than this, right? So if we just leave that one around, that also makes it more simpler for us. And I probably just want to have that at the root component.
And everyone's just patching that through as a.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So, but it could also just exist on all the components in the component tree, right? because
yeah. But basically,
So,
if
but
root
it would
component is
point
triggering,
to
they are triggering.
but it would point up to that would be a single event. Well, it might not even be an event going forward. It might be a task or something, because there are some different semantics around threading on those, right? So you would have maybe a task that you await, and then you can resubscribe afterwards after each time or something. We'll see if we can sort something out there. But the idea is we would just have one on after render, and it would be triggered from whenever the root component of a render component gets has something done to it. And yeah, and maybe this root, this property gets moved down. So but those bits are more, massaging the API service a bit, which I think we can work on once we've sort of solved the two main things, which are these two, I believe. Because and that also, I think, simplifies some of the other race conditions we've had, where we've been trying to be lazy about when we update things, which has meant that sometimes we were trying to, in V1, we try not to, because it's quite costly to create a new set of DOM nodes for each and every return component. So whenever we actually have a render component that has, been updated during our update display async, we just go and set its nodes and its markup to null. And the next time somebody tries to access those, we go and then at that point rebuild that. But if they do that after the render cycle is done, and there might be a new render cycle ongoing at the same time, then there might be a race condition between us going and getting the current render tree, the current render tree for a specific component. So I think for our sanity going forward for V2, we're just going to scrap all that. And whenever we have we actually have render tree diffs edits, we're just going to recreate the markup during the update display async, because that update display async does guarantee that there's no other renders happening at the same time. And then we can update it, and we have control. There's things that are blocked. We probably want in the render still, we want to prevent people from, while update display, or rather when we go and start a new render cycle, which is something that happens, we have another method we override, process pending renders, right? When that happens, we have a lock, and when that process pending renders is done, we exit that lock. And when process pending renders is done, the update display async is also done. And then we can allow people to go and use the find components to actually walk up and down the component tree. So that should be fine to do it like that. But I think that we might do a little bit of extra work sometimes, but it's also going to simplify things, and we might actually end up having fewer locks. So all in all, I think the performance is probably going to be better at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm just going to copy paste this back here in the browser. So I think we are getting to, I don't know, we tend to stop around 4 p.m. my time, which is, I guess, is 6 p.m. your time. So
yes.
do you wanna, should we sort of try to sum up for today? And
I would say so,
do some investigation. I might just take a stab at looking at a few different of these algorithms. Maybe just try to do in terms of angle sharp, not in terms of bUnit, just in terms of angle sharp, just see if I can take this. I'll probably just feed it into ChatGPT or Copilot and say, convert this to C#. Assume I'm going to use this I'm going to use this with angle sharp, convert this code to C# and spit it out, and then I'll fix the box afterwards. I do see there are tests here. So I guess
Also convert them via ChatGPT, and then everything is nice.
yeah. I'm not sure if this is actually. This doesn't look like test code to me. Might be wrong though.
Maybe this is helper methods.
This actually looks like the library as well. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Is there any other
index? Yeah, maybe I'll ask ChatGPT to also explain this.
Well, there's Mocha run. That sounds
that's
at
Mocha.
least
Yeah,
like something.
so there's something in here. Yeah, so if they have some tests and some demos going on here, we might be able to to do something around that. They also have a video thing. So yeah, I wanna see if a morphing algorithm out there will allow us to easily convert to C#. Have some fun with that. Try to reach out to Florian, and yeah. Anyway, let's call this a stream. So next Friday you won't be here, but next Friday after that, that's okay.
I feel already the shame and the blame and what rhymes on shame and blame. I don't know, but a third thing I also feel.
Let me just double check my calendar before I promise anything. Where did Outlook go now? Yes, here we go. So let's see. Today is the 16th. Then we have the 23rd. You can't do it then. I should definitely be on for the 30th of August. So hopefully, folks, we will be back on the 30th of August.
We try our best.
We'll try our best. Okay, Stephen, have a lovely time.
You too have a lovely weekend. Yeah. Don't burn. It's, at least for me, I'm just melting right now.
Oh yeah. Well, so up here in Iceland, we're just happy if the sun is shining, it's not raining. So we will get a bit of rain, but mostly it's going to be sunny, so it's going to be a good time. 12, 13, 15 degrees if we're lucky, and then off to the swimming pools, out 30. To see the countryside. Yeah, so Iceland is awesome during the summer when the sun is shining. If it's raining, it's just miserable. So yeah, yay for sun. But I hear you. It's hot down in Europe. So yeah.
Yeah. But could be worse. And also for us, it should rain soon. So it's fine. It's fine.
You'll be here.
I'm not looking for the English words. Wait. How's it called? Plaintive. It's called plaintive. Sniffling. I like sniffling even more. Yeah, that's what I am if it's hot.
I see what you mean.
You don't want to be around me if I'm sick. Just imagine that, but just magnitude 2, 3 worse.
Well, I hope you get over your man flu soon then.
I try my best.
Steven. All right.
I wish you a beautiful day. Thanks for having me. Exactly.
You too.
Thanks for having
me. Thank you. And everybody, thanks for coding with us. See you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.